Hey, welcome back to Patriot to the Core podcast. I am Thad Forrester, and you're listening to episode number 26. And today we have as our guest Kyle Defoor, who's our first SEAL on the program. And I had a great talk with Kyle, man. He and I grew up together, and so you'll have to bear with us just a little bit. I mean, we were doing some reminiscing about growing up in the small northwest Alabama town of Haleyville. But he really gives us some insight into, why he joined the Navy and why he became a SEAL, and how he never once thought about quitting ever during BUD/S, or I think during anything. But he got seriously sick. He got a flesh-eating bacteria, almost died while he was in BUD/S. But man, he made it through, and he ended up becoming a sniper, and a member of an elite East Coast team, which you'll know what he's talking about when you hear him speak in our interview. But yeah, we had a great time. He was really serious once he decided he was going to be a SEAL. I mean, all he knew, he's just like me, I think, because all he knew was Rambo. So he knew Green Berets, and he didn't know anything about Rangers or SEALs or anything else. So he saw that recruiting video, Someone Special. I'm sure some of you out there know what I'm talking about. I guess I don't know if it's used anymore, but it definitely was an old SEAL recruiting video, and that looked like what he wanted to do. So man, he just excelled at his training and became a sniper, and he deployed multiple times. We don't talk about anything specific with his missions, but yeah, I mean, just know that he did some awesome stuff and was part of some big time missions, and he loved his service, and he said it was an honor for him to serve, and sometimes he regrets getting out after 10 years, but he's a great American. And I just had a great talk with him. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please go to iTunes and rate it, and share it, please. Well, Kyle, it's great having you on my show, Patriot to the Core. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So I wanted to talk first about your life growing up in the Ville in northwest Alabama, and why you even, when did you decide you wanted to go in the military, and when did you decide you wanted to be a SEAL, and how did all that come about?
Yeah, well, as you kind of know, because I don't know if the listeners know, but me and you are from the same town, so we're both from Haleyville, Alabama. You've got the inside scoop. So, when we were growing up, I mean, pre-internet, I guess we would call it now, we didn't know what we didn't know. So I think most of us around that area, that northwest Alabama area, we were going to do probably what our parents did, which was, maybe go to college. I don't even think going to college back then was a 100%er. But I think most people around our age were going to college when they graduated or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then generally, I think, getting a job in some way supporting the manufactured housing business, because that's kind of what we had there,
right.
Quote unquote mobile homes. So, I mean, that's what my dad did. That's what almost our town was built on. Whether guys did lumber to support it, or they did, furniture or whatever, it was all to support that industry. And, I was kind of like, man, I don't know. And, I wanted to go to college to play football. That was my deal. When we were younger, junior high into, I guess, 10th, 11th grade. And I was decent, pretty decent football player. And that's what because I think when we grew up there, it was like Alabama Crimson Tide or Auburn. And that's what that was your, I guess, people you looked up to. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Alabama and play football. And, I think as I got closer to graduation, I guess, looking back on it now, kind of reality sits in, and you're like, well, that's not probably going to happen because various reasons. Probably talent was a little bit of it, and size was probably a bigger piece of it. So
they didn't appreciate your speed, I don't guess, did they? Because you were fast.
No, I mean, yeah, I was fast. I've said that, I think, the interviews before or whatever. I mean, I did pretty decent in track, and I think I had I was running I don't know if it was 10th or 11th grade, I was running like a 4.540. So I was definitely fast, but I think I only weighed like 150 pounds or something like that. So everybody, any college that even remotely talked to me was a Division III, and that's no scholarship. That's basically, I think where they do like help you with tuition or something. And then I had talked to in Northwest Alabama or UNA, North Alabama, which Bruce Cheatham, remember him? He went. He was a year before me, and he was a defensive back, and he went there. And so he kind of like opened that door up a little bit. And then, the Brian Long had gone to UNA way before me and you. And, UNA was Division II, and I was like, well, I don't know. I was kind of like, I want to go to UNA. I want to go to Alabama. And so I think I just realized that wasn't going to happen. And you got to be a realist a little bit. I mean, now looking back on it and knowing what I know now, you know what I wish I'd done? I wish I'd walked on in Alabama. Because I talk to people nowadays, and it's like, and even, you look at like Dabo Sweeney, that's like a big one now, because he's the head coach of Clemson. A lot of people don't know. I remember Dabo. I remember going to see him when we were kids, going to Tuscaloosa and watching him play. And his story is like, he was a walk-on. I think he was on the scout team for his freshman and sophomore year. And then he got a scholarship, I think, like his junior and senior year. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he was like 5'0", he was a white receiver, if I'm not mistaken. He was either a white boy receiver or a white boy defensive back. Either one, but bizarre. And, 5'0", 100-0. And that's kind of the stuff I look back on now, I guess, kicking myself in the tail end and going, damn it, should have done it. But, so that's kind of like growing up, besides the normal hunting, fishing, riding motorcycles, swimming at the swimming pool, golfing at the golf course, our normal hangouts back when we were kids. But, so yeah, I guess, I think it was about my 11th, when I was in a junior, I wanted to go to, and I don't know the exact dates, and I've said this before. I need to talk to Brookie Pulliam, because she'll probably remember. Whenever we had that deal when you're like a junior, where they tell you like this is what you should do for in life. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? It's like the big conference for students. It's like a they bring everybody in, the colleges, the military recruiters, and all that stuff. And so I remember kind of getting in my mind, I wanted to go in the military, and do like, wanted to be not a normal military. I wanted to be like an SF guy, because that's all I knew back then was Rambo or whatever. Yeah. And I remember going to that thing, and all the military recruiters were like on the side in the cafeteria, and the Army dude was like this gigantic fat guy, and I just was like, oh my God, not impressed, which, again, looking back on it, you're like, there's nothing to do with anything in the Army, but, and he was like, I was like, hey, I want to go in the I want to be a Green Beret, blah, blah. I had never heard of the Rangers. I had never heard of a combat controller. I'd never heard of a SEAL. Never heard of a PJ. All I knew was Green Beret. And I was not impressed with him, so I just went down the line. I was like, Marine, soft wool metal jacket. I was like, maybe. I think the Marine guy like went to take a smoke break or something. And the Navy dude was there, and he was like super chill. And he's like, I remember he had a TV. This is so weird because I didn't remember this till just now. But he had like the TV with you remember how you put the VHS cassette in the bottom of it and it would play? It was like a little mini TV. Yep, built-in VCR, and he was playing the SEAL recruiting video, which it was called Be Someone Special, and it was the same recruiting video from like 1962 to like 2005 or something. They just recently changed it, and I was like, that, look at that, that's kind of cool, right? So. Who would ever, I'd never heard of that. I'd never heard of a SEAL. So I saw that, talked to him, and of course, the normal, hey, yeah, you can go right there, all that deal. So I just, with that, I was kind of interested in it. So from there, I went and started, investigating it and researching it as best I could, which is probably for a lot of listeners pretty weird to understand that this was 1990. Let me think here. Let me get my years right. This would have been like 92, I think.
Yeah, early your junior year. Yeah.
Yeah, so like 92. There's no, here's what you had. You had a library. That was it. There's no internet. There's nothing. And I found the movie Navy SEALs that Charlie Sheen was in. I watched that and I was like, even back then I was like, a little bit hokey, but okay, got it. And what kind of, and I don't think I've ever said this in an interview, but this will be interesting because my mother will remember this, is we had a teacher at Haleyville, and I cannot remember her name now to save my life, but when we were in high school, she would have been like a elementary school, I think maybe fourth grade. Chambers, Mrs. Chambers. Do you remember Mrs. Chambers?
I don't remember Chambers, no.
I think that was her name, Mrs. Chambers.
Chambliss? Was it Chambliss?
Chambliss. It might have been Chambliss.
I know Chambliss. I had her. My brother had her.
Well, she ended up marrying. She got divorced, and she married a guy by the name of Ken Graves. And he was a Vietnam SEAL from like SEAL Team 2. And, of course, I was telling my mom and dad, hey, listen, I think I'm going to go in the Navy. And, they're like, you want to be a what? Because nobody back then knows what a SEAL is. I'm sure, my mother has told me before, you get obsessed with something as a kid, and that's all they hear. And of course, we can probably relate to that now because we have kids. But I don't remember like that, but my mom does. And I think she like said something casually to somebody at the school because my mom worked at the school. We got to update the listeners here. My mom worked at the school, so. She like mentioned something to somebody, and somebody was like, "Yeah, Mrs. Whatever her name was, Chambers or Chambliss, whatever. She's married to a guy who used to be a SEAL." And I remember, my mom coming home going like, "Hey, I got some good news," And so I went over there and talked to that dude, and man, I will never forget it. It was wild. It was because he was he's a full on Vietnam frogman, and they lived down. I'll tell you where they lived was. The road that's in the curve across from Banks Barbecue, whatever that road was, you can go down that road.
Yep, that goes out but to Miller's Seafood. Is it that one you're talking about?
Yep, that's the one. That's the one that goes to Miller's Seafood. Correct. They live down that road somewhere. And anyway, so I went and talked to this dude, and that was kind of like, now it was getting kind of a sealed deal. No pun intended. Because he was like, just the way he was, he's kind of a hard guy. I was just impressed. I mean, he had to be at that time. At that time, he was probably 60-something years old. And, I was like, man, that's what I want to do right there. And, so that's kind of how it started. I know that's probably a long-winded explanation, but that's how the whole growing up and thing kind of got going.
Okay. So then it seemed like you were really committed because I'll tell you what I remember. You were a grade ahead of me, but we had a class together. I believe it was Trig. And I remember you talk. Well, first of all, I saw you running around town all the time. And the roads of Haleyville are not the most runner friendly. And, no wide shoulders, no wide roads really. And, but you ran all over the city, all over the town. And then also I remember you saying, you could, the senior trip was an annual event that the seniors went on to Washington, D.C. and New York. And so it was about a week. You'd be gone for a week. And so this was your senior year. And I remember you saying, I'm not going on the senior trip. I can't go that long without running. Or then you joked, like I could get out and run behind the bus, I guess, for a while. But, I mean, am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was, once I got into it, I was like, and I think I was just taking all that athletic motivation, from track and cross country and football. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be a football player, but I'm going to be a frogman. And, I started working out and, what they do is, back in those days, you would, I think it was Mr. Graves that gave me the info, and I literally called, which again, a lot of listeners right now are not even going to know what we're talking about, but you picked up a phone with push button dials and you dialed 0 and you got the operator and you're like, please connect me to, Naval Training Center, Orlando, Florida. And, back in them days, the Navy had 3 boot camps. They had Orlando, San Diego, and Great Lakes. And basically you went to the boot camp for where you were from in the nation. So obviously we were from the South. We were going to Orlando. If you were from, like, I think it was, the Plain States westward, you went to San Diego. Everybody in the North and the Midwest went to Great Lakes, went to Chicago. So I knew I was going to go to Orlando. So I called down there and I talked to the SEAL on duty, which, looking back on it, was freaking bizarre. But I was like, hey, I want to come be a SEAL, which I'm sure he took that phone call 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And I said, what do I need to do? And he sent me in the mail, of course, because there's no email. So it was like a package. And it told you, like, here's how you get ready for buds. This is what you need to run. This is what you need to swim. This is how you need to work out. And I got that, I think, when I was in, it probably would have been sometime in my junior year. I don't know when. I can't remember when. But yeah, so by the time I was a senior, I sacrificed a lot of things. I mean, I quit football my senior year, which, there was a lot of people that were not happy about that.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
It wasn't just my dad, and it wasn't just my mom. I mean, I remember, a lot of the coaches. I mean, I got pulled into basically every athletic office down there, and basically told, hey, do you know what you're doing, kind of deal. And I said, well, yeah, and it was funny because I don't think that would happen nowadays. I don't think parents and or administrators would they'd be like, look, kid, you can get a D3 ride or you can get a D2 ride or whatever, because even track, I probably, maybe it would have been for football, but maybe track, because I was, doing pretty well in state meets. But anyway, so I didn't go to the senior trip. Again, for us, for where we're from, that's a big deal because most kids have never been out of the state. Maybe we went to Birmingham a couple of times or something when we were kids, but we did that annual senior trip and we busted up to DC, saw all the, or this is what Haleyville would do. They would bus all the seniors to DC and they would check out the Capitol and, Lincoln Memorial and all the normal tourist stops. And then they would bus them to New York City. And I think they would see a play in the Empire State Building and Statue of Liberty, and kind of the normal, right? And then they would drive back. And that was kind of a big deal because, again, back in those days, the seniors would phone call in to the school, and we would all be sitting. If you weren't a senior, you'd be sitting in class, and the seniors would say, hey, we're at the Empire State Building.
Yeah, they played on the radio.
Yeah, it was played on radio because I was like, and people are probably listening to this going, where the hell are you guys from? We're from the southwestern tip of the Cumberland Plateau.
Yeah,
we are from the middle of nowhere. So, I didn't go on my senior trip, and that my mom was pissed about that. I'll tell you right now, she was not happy. I didn't go to prom when I was a junior, which, my mom was not happy about that one. I went as a senior. So yeah, there was definitely some sacrifice. I would tell anybody that's listening to this, if you're a young kid and you're thinking about doing this kind of thing, you don't need to do that. That's probably a little extreme. I mean, I could have went on the senior trip, not a big deal. Go on your senior trip. You know what I mean? Go to your prom. Just delay going to boot camp, by a couple of months to get, if you can't run for whatever it is, a week and a half or whatever. But I look back on that now again, and I probably would do it different nowadays.
But you shipped out not long after graduation. Doesn't sound from what I remember. You go to Montgomery. You end up. I don't know where you go from there, but if you can just, because I know you went to Buds pretty early, and I'm curious too. Was that common to go to Buds at 18 years old? I think that's how.
No. Okay. So I go to. I can't remember. In Alabama, we go to school. It's not like, I think we're actually a little bit different than a lot of other states. Back in them days, I think we started in like September, first week of September, or something like that. And I think we graduated like mid-May or something. Does that sound about right?
Mid-May, yeah, 18th, somewhere around there, or 20th, I don't know.
Somewhere around there. And I left at the end of May, so I think I had a week or so before I went to boot camp, which was an impressive week in itself, if I remember correctly. Because I was like, man, I'm going to the Navy. I was like, every girl that I ever wanted to ask out, I think I asked every one of them out in that week and a half. And the funny thing is like half of them said yes, so I had a real problem.
Hey, well, one of those girls, I remember her telling me about you getting the hotel in Montgomery, and it's like you wore the carpet out just from doing all the push-ups, so instead of anytime you had any downtime, you're just doing push-ups. And
yeah, because I didn't want to fail the PT test,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went, I think, it was the end of May sometime. I can't remember. I was in Navy. I went down to Montgomery. That was where our processing station was. And I'd been to Montgomery a few times because that's where the state track meet was every year. So I kind of knew the area semi well. But went down there. They bused us from Montgomery to Orlando, Florida. Started boot camp. I can't remember the exact. I think it was May 29th. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere in there. But yeah, right after graduation. And I had set all that up. So, when I was a senior, I had basically set it up so that I knew that the source rating the job that I was going to have in the Navy would be a job that the SEAL teams would recognize. And this is kind of talking over a lot of people's head probably, but nowadays we don't have that problem in SEAL teams. You're called a special operator, but when I came in, you had to have a job in the Navy, whether you were a torpedoman or a bosun's mate or a signalman or a quartermaster. Now, if you passed BUD/S, you were never going to work in that job, but you had to have a job where if you failed BUD/S, which is obviously, that's the percentages, 70-80% fail rate. So the Navy had to have something you could do for the next 4 years. So, I went to Orlando, went to boot camp, and I thought boot camp was the greatest thing ever, personally. I mean, especially in Orlando. Guys that have gone to Orlando can tell you, it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees, it's like perfect weather. And probably the best thing about it is that's where all the girls went. So if you were a girl coming in the Navy, and then those days, that's where you went to boot camp too. And girls did not go to Great Lakes back then, and they did not go to San Diego. They only went to Orlando. So, I thought it was the greatest thing I had ever experienced in my life. It was like, there's women everywhere. Everybody's in decent shape because, you're having to run. And I mean, even the standards for the normal Navy back then were halfway decent, and everybody's young. Everybody's 19 or 20. So,
and so I guess you have a shaved head. Everybody, you stand out, right, when you go out in public.
Yeah, but there's no going out in public.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't. Okay. When you're in boot camp, you don't leave. Yeah, so it's like,
okay.
I don't know, Navy boot camp's like 8 weeks or something like that. 6 maybe. I don't know. 8 weeks sounds about right. You learn Navy stuff. Nautical stuff. You learn how to, as the old saying goes, fold clothes really well because you have to. Everything has to fit in your sea bag and underneath your rack on the ship, which I never experienced, thank God. But so I don't know. It's something like maybe halfway through boot camp, they ask during one of your little PT exercises, physical training exercises, they say, hey, does anybody want to volunteer for a specialized unit called EOD, UDT SEAL team or Navy diver? And, like no kidding, everybody raises their hand. Every male raises his hand. And so they pull you all aside. You do the PT test. There was, I think we had something like 30 people who volunteered for the SEAL teams back in my class, and we had 2 of us that passed the test. Which, looking back on it, that test was really not hard. I mean, I could pass that test right now. You know what I mean? Like, not hard at all. But me and this other dude passed it. So they're like, okay, it's kind of like good or bad, however you look at it. right at that time, once you pass that test, that's when kind of you already get segregated, and it's already kind of a specialized thing. Because they're like, okay, you guys passed it, so here's what's going to happen. Every day that your boot camp class does marching or does their version of PT, you guys are going to come to me and PT with me. And this is the guy that's the SEAL that's there. He's assigned there. So that was kind of cool. So me and this other dude would run our happy little butts over to the pool and, swim, run, and work out with the SEAL who was getting us ready for buds.
So you shipped out, I guess you went to Coronado, is that right?
Yeah, so I went to boot camp, and I got down there. I had to do I went to a school there in Orlando for 2 or 3 weeks, and it was a torpedoman school. I don't even think I finished the entire A school, because when you had orders to buds, I think they just made you do a certain piece of it. And it seems like it was 3 weeks. And yeah, so I was in Coronado. I was in buds in, let's see, it was the end of August, beginning of September. I graduated high school in May, end of May, 1st of June. And I was no shit in Coronado, end of August, beginning of September, same year.
So I've wondered, I know you grew up swimming, so did I, but how did you prepare, or did you, for buds? Was there a place you swam in Haleyville? Did you go to the city pool and swim laps, or a pond, a lake, or what?
Oh, you don't know the story?
Uh-uh.
I thought I might have never told this. I don't know. I do so many interviews, and it just, who knows? I just, whatever people ask. But, okay, so it's actually a pretty good story. So here we go. So when I get, as I said earlier, when you get that packet from the guy who says this is what you should be able to do, here's what the test is that you're going to take in boot camp. And I read it, and it's 500 yards, no fins, and you have to do the underwater recovery stroke. That's the only stroke you can do. You can't do freestyle. You can't do anything. That stroke only. So first off, I'm like, what the hell does underwater recovery stroke mean?
Yeah.
So, of course, I call the guy back. I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, listen, kid, it's the side stroke, except we put our head underwater. So when we turn our head, we can breathe. So we're not angled in the water. We're more, on plane, if you will. So I'm like, okay, kind of get it, but okay. So what I was doing is I was swimming there at the city pool in Haleyville. And if you remember the guy, Kyle Rushing.
Yeah.
Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
He ran like that facility up there, whatever it was called, the neighborhood facilities building, I think it was called.
Yep, that's it.
It was like our version of a YMCA for everybody that's listening. And we had it was a 50-meter pool, but it had a wall in the middle of it, so really only 25 yards of it was actually good. And they would let me go in there and swim pretty much anytime I wanted to, even when it was cold or whatever. So I would go up there and I would get my laps in. But I realized I would time myself with a stopwatch, and because obviously it was 25 yards wide, I could figure out what 500 yards was. And I was not making time, and I'm like, whoa, the run, no problem, push-ups, no problem, pull-ups, no problem, sit-ups, no problem. Swim, big problem. So this is where mom comes in. So everybody that's listening, don't yell at your mother. Your mother knows sometimes. So my mom is she goes, okay, here's what you should do. And she goes, you should go swim at the University of Alabama. I'm like, okay, Mom. How am I going to do that? And she's like, well, I'm going to show you. So she picks up the phone and calls down there. Same deal. Dial 0. Connect me to the University of Alabama, can I get the pool, And so my mom had remembered an article that came out in the paper that when the university rebuilt the swimming pool, I think it was in the early 90s, obviously it's public money. And my mom called down there and said, hey, look, this kid needs to learn how to swim. Can somebody down there teach him? This is what he's trying to do. And the coaches were like, absolutely, we can do that, no problem. And I remember my mom, I'm watching my mom on the phone, and I'm like, they can, what? How do they know, like, okay. So because my mom worked at the school, and this is where this whole thing is, this most bizarre story in history of time, but, I varsity lettered in the 9th grade for football, and I varsity lettered in the 8th grade for track. So I had, I didn't have to go to PE my senior year. I probably didn't even have to go my junior year. I had plenty of stuff.
Huh, yeah.
So I had enough credits. I knew I wasn't going to college, and I didn't have to do PE. So technically, I was done about noon my senior year with school, like classes, like whatever it was, trig, English, history, whatever. I can't remember whatever we took back then. But I remember getting done at like 11:45 or noon. So my mom talked to the principal, whose name at the time was Mullins. I don't know if you remember that dude.
Oh yeah.
But
definitely.
That was the guy who was the principal. She talked to him, and she talked to Coach Ashley, who was the assistant principal, and she's like, listen, can he go, to Tuscaloosa when he gets done and swim? And they're like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. He's out of school. That's fine. That could basically be his quote unquote, PE. So every day I would drive. When I got done with school, I'd hop in my car. I would leave the high school at like noon. I would drive to Tuscaloosa, which was probably, an hour and a half?
Hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah, hour and a half.
Cruising down in the silver Saturn? Is that what it was?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had I either had the Honda Prelude or the Saturn, whichever one it was, and I would go down to the university, and the first time I go down there, the two coaches that were there, one was named Sonia and one was named Ray, and both women. And I show up and I walk in, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for Sonia and Ray. And they're like, that's us. I said, listen, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get really good at swimming the side stroke, no fins, and I need to be able to do this amount in this amount of time. And this is a God's honest true story. I swear to God. One of the two, I can't remember them apart now, but Sonia or Ray looked up at me and said, oh, are you going to Bud's? And I was just like, what? I was like, well, I'm trying to, yeah. And they said, yeah, we one of our All-Americans here just graduated last year and went in the Navy, and he's in Bud's right now. Like, he's in the Navy. He's in Coronado right now. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. What are the chances? So they knew, and so you got to imagine, this kid is an All-American swimmer at Alabama. He is, obviously him learning the underwater recovery stroke is not a big deal, but they knew it because they had watched him do it so much. So they knew how to teach it to me. So they taught me how to do it, and I swam for, I can't remember, we maybe asked my mom, she might remember, I don't know, but I went down there. I mean, I probably put 30,000 miles in that car. I mean, you know what I mean? Because I went down there daily. I went down there at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Dang.
Because I knew that was the weak point. And again, that's a lot of sacrifice to be 17, 18 years old. Obviously nowadays you probably don't need to do it because there's more working out facilities and stuff like that, I think, available. But those girls down there, they got me real squared away. And again, as an 18-year-old boy, being at the University of Alabama with their swim team was not a bad deal at all. No. I mean, not a bad deal. So that was kind of cool. A sidebar to that story is, 3 or 4 years later, when I was at SEAL Team 2, I met the guy who Sonia and Ray had trained. Me and him, we served together at SEAL Team 2. So
awesome.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Kind of came full. Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's the chances, right?
Yeah, I had no idea that's what you did. I've wondered if you broke into the city pool at night, or if you went out on at Bear Creek, or what you did. So
yeah, because you gotta. The biggest thing is you gotta understand how to do that stroke efficiently, because and a lot of people always ask, why don't you guys just do freestyle? And it's just not. freestyle is just not something that's going to be done normally. Obviously, when you're swimming across the beach or whatever, on a real world type thing. So that's the reason we do that stroke. But yeah, so that's the story, man. That's how I learned to swim, basically.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you too, and I may have my terminology wrong because I'm not sure if it's different in the Navy, but in the course of your training, before you're assigned to a team, you went to SERE, and I want to tell you a story. I remember when Mark went, and I don't know, did y'all go to Washington for SERE, or did y'all go somewhere else?
Now I didn't. SERE training was not in the pipeline for SEAL team when I came in.
Okay.
You went later, like after you were at your SEAL team, you would go. So you would either go to Maine or Washington.
Okay.
And there's different levels of that too. So I have been through all levels. So I didn't go until later though. I had probably been in the SEAL teams, couple 3 years before I went.
Okay, so you're a great person to ask this question then. I remember Mark telling me at one point they're doing, I guess it's interrogations, and so they're asking for volunteers, I think. And so Mark just raised his hands like, I'll volunteer, you can interrogate me and torture me. And so they jumped on him and said, you never, ever volunteer if you're held captive to be interrogated. So I just wonder, is that what y'all taught? They taught you, and why is that?
Well, I think the thing is that, if you volunteer for something like that, obviously you're looking for one of two things. You're either looking for a way out of the situation, or you're looking to control the situation, right? Or maybe a combo of both, But yeah, that would not be something that I think any SERE school is going to ever recommend, that you volunteer for anything when you're captured. I mean, we kind of joke about it now in a morbid way, but I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, with our current enemy situation, SERE training is not that hard because you're going to get your head lopped off. So, I mean, it ain't, you know what I mean? If you get captured, right, you're done. So,
I mean, you get humiliated by being naked. They strip you down naked in front of women, right? So that's nothing.
Yeah,
like
but
your
I
head
mean,
cut
like,
off.
It was not like it. Honestly, for us, that's kind of more, and Mark too. Same with PJ. So all the guys that have been through a hard selection course. I mean, like it. SERE schools you're just checking the block. You're just like, hey, we have to do it, so we go. Whatever. But I mean, like, yeah, it's stripping you down in front of a woman. I mean, I don't think the reaction that they got from the frogmen was probably what they want. It was not a big deal to me. I think it was more for most of us. They were like, do not touch the instructors, do not touch the instructors. That's what I remember about SERE school. I mean, it was such not a big deal, like I had a day at Bud's that was harder than all of SERE school together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what was it?
It was just not like any day. I mean, there's tons of them, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, cause Bud, I mean, it's like, the Discovery Channel shows you what they want to show you, what the Navy wants to show you.
Right.
But yeah, like they, instructors out there get physical with you in Coronado. I mean, they're not like hitting you in the face or whatever with a closed fist, but I mean, they're going to, move you around and whatnot. And then you got to remember that you have to do all these things because, if they say, hey, go get wet and then come back and give us, 30 push-ups or whatever. Well, I mean, if you can't do it, then they can just say, hey, failure to perform. This is a guy he's just not in shape enough to do this. They can do that. I mean, so you know what I mean? Like in SERE school is more of trying to do a learning thing, really. Trying to show people like, I guess a little bit about, a little bit of hardness. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, like SERE school is not. Because what can they do to you? They can't really hit you. I mean, they can open hand slap you, but it's like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's just not a big deal. I mean, that they're not. I mean, how long are they going to make you go without food? A week? It's okay. You know what I mean? Like oh, I went without water for a day. You know what I mean? It's like, you're in a training environment. What is this? They're not going to do anything that's that hard. It's more of and it really should be looked at for the student too, as more of a learning environment, like, because those are lessons learned from POWs in Vietnam and World War II, and that's kind of where all that stuff comes from. Buds is more of hey, we're gonna first off, can you perform? Number one. Number two, even though you think you can, we're gonna break you down a little bit, and it's all built on the fact that you want to be there. You want to make it through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas SERE school is like, hey, we're going. It's not like it's SERE school doesn't have I don't even think it has an attrition rate, like 1% or something. I don't know. I mean, probably not a lot. But, I just remember we were very like, most of us were like, okay, this is it. It's not really a big deal, but I probably a lot of that's akin to going through buds, because you're kind of, obviously you get kind of hardened up, right, wrong, or indifferent. Probably look at things a little bit different.
Was there ever a moment in buds where you thought about quitting or wanted to quit?
No, never. I mean, and that's the thing is, when you talk to guys that have been in it, I mean, like, all the guys that I know, everybody's like, oh, fuck no. There's no way I was quitting. That's not happening. Like, it's just not happening, I think that, I mean, I've heard a couple of dudes say, like, yeah, there was days I wanted to quit. I'm like, really? Maybe that's why you didn't do too good when you got in the teams. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. No, I never thought about that. I mean, now there were days where I was like, they would throw in that, 2 timed runs in a 4-day period kind of deal, and you're still sore. There was definitely days where I was like, damn, I don't know if I could beat my old time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, but that's more of a performance thing. You go as hard as you can. You either can or you can't do it. I mean, and if you didn't do it, they'd beat you a little bit or whatever, get you cold. But no, I never thought about quitting. I mean, yeah, I mean, I fed off the people that quit. I mean, and we had a rough hell week. 199 had a winter hell week. I think our hell week was like, if I'm not mistaken, it was either end of January, beginning of February, one of the two. It was not, everybody's like, how cold can it get in Southern California? And it's like, hey man, very. That's the answer.
Yeah. Well, I've heard the water is definitely cold.
Yeah, the water I think is like 55, 60 year round, so it's cold anyway. And then, you throw in some 50-degree air temp, 40-degree air temp,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you got some issues, but yeah, I mean, I fed off that. I mean, most of the guys do. You talk to any of the guys like me that we've been around for. I mean, I don't really consider myself all my friends did 20 years. I only did 10. But even like as a 10-year guy, I mean, like all the dudes that were around when I was around, you look back on it and you're like, God, like. I mean, I would go through buds again. I mean, you probably physically couldn't now, but like it would just be fun. There's no thinking involved really. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like show up on time, put out, don't quit, which is, you've already developed that attitude. So that's not really a big deal, and it's like you get to play in the sand in Southern California. How hard is that? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like, I think that's the way a lot of us think nowadays. Cause some people make it a little more dramatic than it is, I think.
Yeah, maybe you should be a motivational speaker for kids thinking about going to the Navy. That'd be good.
Yeah, the problem nowadays is they're recruiting triathletes. That's the problem, And these triathletes, they don't, this is just my opinion based on what the Navy is trying to do to try to up the graduation rate at buds, which it's never worked, by the way. It hasn't worked since 1962. They tried to get rid of winter hell weeks. That didn't work. Graduation rate stayed the same. They've tried to recruit triathletes. Graduation rate stays the same. Yeah, I think it's just a program that, it has unscrewed itself along the way. One, because of the longevity. It's realistically, it's about 7 months long. I think it's 26 weeks of training, but then you got like 2 or 3 weeks on the front end and the back end, you know what I mean, to get all your shit together before you guys start, you know. So it ends up being like 7 months. So, I mean, you can be the biggest running god of all time, and I've seen it. Everybody's seen it. Everybody had it in their buds class, you know. And those guys, you know, 7 months of that is a long time, man. You know, they, you know, if they had the perfect formula, they wouldn't need it. You know, the selection courses, right? That's kind of what we say nowadays. It's like if we could impart our wartime experiences on a kid in buds, you know, we could make buds shorter. We could make it easier because we could test for what we're looking for, you know, but we can't, that doesn't exist, you know?
Yeah.
And buds is not it doesn't mean anything sometimes anyway. I mean, there's guys that have done great in buds. They went to their SEAL team. They did great. But, you know, maybe when they got overseas, they didn't do too good for whatever reason. There's various reasons. So there's no, you know, that's kind of the ultimate thing when it comes to this game is there's no, you know, if we had a USB port in our neck that we could plug all this info into, we wouldn't need experience anymore, would we?
That's right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
So you, at some point in your career, you're able to, I don't know, try out or apply for another East Coast team. And so I'm just wondering, you know, what can you say about how are you able to be, you know, what did you have to do to get selected for the, you know, quote, I guess, research development test and evaluating team? And, you know, what was that process like, and how much different was it than what you'd already been through?
Well, I mean, you know, that is not like buds. I mean, buds is like, you know, kind of beat people down a little bit. You know, you're in the military 100%. You know what I mean? Like it's hard, you know, from a lot of different aspects. Whereas, you know, this type of selection course you're talking about is more, people aren't yelling at you. People aren't making you drop and do push-ups. You know, that's not what they're doing. They're going, hey, here is what we want you to do. Go in and do it. If you can't do it, then you're not what that place is looking for. So, you know, I would call it professional, you know, you need to be able to perform at that level. So, you know, to get there, everybody, you know, the guys that are there need to kind of quote unquote invite you. And then when you get there, you have to pass another 6-month selection course. And, that one's a little different, not only in the aspect where I'm talking about it's more professional than it is, you know, beating a guy kind of thing. You know, there's also your peers. Your peers do a lot of, you know, they might say, hey, we don't like this dude. We don't trust him. You know, whatever it could be. That has a big impact in it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people might refer to that as good old boy network. And it definitely is, and there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, definitely, it's not as high as a attrition rate as buds, but it's definitely not. There is not 100% of the people who started it are graduating it either. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's probably more like somewhere like 50% or something like that. I would say 50% graduate, maybe as high as 70% graduate. Okay. You know. Whereas opposed to buds, it's, you know, you might get 20 or 30% of the class to graduate, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's very impressive when people make it through the training that you have in your life. I mean, has it come at a cost? I don't know, maybe physically or family-wise, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I think I probably would do the high school thing different, you know. Of course, it's easy to be a 41-year-old man and look back and go, hey, you know, this is what I should have done. But, and you know, if there's anybody listening to this now, they're not, you know, I mean, same as me, they're not going to listen. They're going to do what the hell they want. I mean, you could try to advise them, but if I had to do it over again, I would probably go to college first because, I mean, it didn't really affect me and my career in the teams, and it did not affect what I do now. But that's, it's a different time. That was 20 years ago. Nowadays, it's almost expected. The college degree thing's almost expected. And it's even almost expected even of our enlisted guys. You know what I mean? Guys they're not going to be officers. They're enlisted, but it's kind of like, believe it or not, the majority of our enlisted guys have college degrees.
Wow.
So, I would probably, if I had to do it over again, I'd probably do that. So I'd say, yeah, that was definitely, that was a little bit of sacrifice, right? Because obviously I'm not going to go back to college now. I think family-wise, I think I missed my grandmother's funeral. I missed my aunt's funeral. I missed my uncle's funeral. Stuff like that. Looking back on it, I was never, I didn't have my kids came about later in my career, so it wasn't that big a deal. But then, there's always, probably I look at things different than normal people, which, it may be good, it may be bad. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's probably definitely a little bit of sacrifice there, whereas I'm sure that there are other men who will do something a certain way, and I'm not going to do it that way, and that might get old after a while for the family or you or your wife, or I don't know, so yeah, there's probably a little bit of sacrifice in there. Physically, flesh-eating bacteria, that almost killed me. That was not a good one.
That was in buds, right?
Yeah, that was really not a good one. I had a real bad hip problem, probably midway through my career. The Navy, of course, wanted to operate, and I was like, no way. And I ended up, fixing it by going to a chiropractor and, changing a lot of things I did. That was definitely an issue. I got hit with one IED in Afghanistan. That was definitely probably got some issues off that. A couple of what they refer to now as hard landings in helicopters, which is kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like pre 9/11, it would have been a crash. Now it's referred to as a hard landing. So I think I have 500 plus free falls. So there's probably a little bit of physical, but I think the problem is, you get so used to living with that pain. You're like, it's not really pain. I shouldn't say that. I don't want people to miss, like I'm walking around in pain. I'm not walking around in constant pain. It's definitely like you can feel there's some wear on the body. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like there's definitely some wear on the body, but I try to just keep a decent PT program now and try to keep everything moving. So,
well,
I never got shot. Yeah. I'm doing all right. I ran 35 miles a couple years ago. So
I know. And you can still you can still pop out. How many pull-ups can you do? I know it's over at least 26 or 28 straight.
Right now, not that many. Cause I tore the top part of my pec and, I guess the middle part of my trap that's on top of my shoulder, a few months ago. And I'm just now coming back from that. Right now, I'm probably do about, I'd say 18. Normally I'm good for 20 plus, no problem. But man, when that happened, I couldn't work out for like 8 weeks. And it was just like, man,
ouch.
Coming back from that. Yeah, that happened around Halloween of 16. So I'm still, here's something for the listeners. Don't ever stop PTing because it does not get easier. I'm going to tell you that right now. And when you get hurt, you know what I mean? Like the recovery time when you get older is just, it's so much longer. Doesn't matter how good a shape you're in, the recovery time is just longer,
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so probably like 18 right now, which is kind of like, I have self standards, when you can't do 20, to me, I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
I can't even pass my Kyle's personal PT test I'm failing right now.
Well, yeah, on a good day I get 10. So, and I don't know how much better I'm going to get than that, which is okay. But yeah, that's pull-ups, man. That's an awesome workout. They're tough for me.
Yeah, they are. I mean, you look at like professional climbers and look at how many pull-ups they can do. And you know what I mean? Like strength, right?
Yeah.
You know, which is a good example, like, you know, it's kind of a little humility, right? You know what I mean? You're like, I'm in the military. I can do 20 pull-ups. I can do 25. It's like, hey, dude, go hang out like in a, you know, Yellowstone at some of the famous climbing routes and go talk to some dudes. And yeah, they'll be knocking out like 40. You know what I mean?
Good grief.
And that's their warm up to go do their route. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, hey man, just as long as you're doing it, you know, numbers are not that big a deal. To a point, but you know, 10 is good, man. If you can do 10 pull-ups, I don't care how old you are. You can be a little kid, you can be 25, you can be 45. 10 pull-ups is pretty decent. That's pretty good, man.
Well, they're pretty strict. You know, there's no kipping, and I think you're the same way. I think yours are the regular strict pull-ups. Is that right?
Yeah. That kipping thing is not. Those are not pull-ups. You know, no matter what a CrossFitter tells you, those are not pull-ups. You know, CrossFit, or what we like to call it, military boot camp, but you know, with sugar on top. I mean, you know what I mean? Somebody marketed military, Marine Corps boot camp and Army boot camp and BUD/S and Ranger School, and they marketed it, and it's called CrossFit.
Yeah, it's gotten huge.
I wish I'd have thought of it.
Yeah, I know. Well, man, there's so much I'd love to talk to you about. I know now, well, for the listeners, I mean, you mentioned you ran 35 miles nonstop. I mean, just so they know, you did a fundraiser and you ran the route that we walk every year to represent Mark's age. You ran it almost 2 years ago now, and so you had an escort part of the time to help you at some different intersections. But I remember thinking, he's going to get chased by so many dogs. I mean, because there's so many. We're out in the country and we have dogs follow us all the time, but we'll have a group, you know, of 60 guys, so we don't really get attacked. But they plenty of them follow us. But you managed to not get bitten by any out there in the country.
Yeah, it was only one spot that was bad. I'm trying to think. It was where we went through like you know, I think it was the Aunt Jenny Johnson area when you come back out on 243, I think it is.
Yeah.
And there was these dogs came out of this yard, but I had my blade on me, you know, and I had already, you know, mindset wise, I was like, okay, any dogs that I'll give the owner one chance, and then I'll do a template on that dog, you know, because there's a blade template for a dog, you know, to kill a dog. So I was running with my blade the whole time because obviously I'm not going to run 35 miles with a pistol.
Yeah.
So there was that one area right there, and I was like, man, this is bad. And I was, you know, you're like 28 miles into it or something like that at that point, and I was like, I can't run faster. You know what I mean? Like I can't. I'm going to outrun the dog. You know, that's not going to happen. So yeah, but I was like, the dude was on the porch, and I was like, hey, get your dog. And he called it back, so it wasn't a big deal. But
well, that was awesome you doing that, man. When we were on about mile 20, I'm going to say about 26, and I called you, and you were sitting on a plane in Birmingham ready to fly back home. So it was just incredible, man.
Well, I told everybody I appreciate you inviting me down to do it, and I was like, I would have walked it with you guys, I just didn't have time. So I figured, well, I'll do it, but I'm going to have to run it because I got to be back at work.
That's pretty funny. No time, so you just run it.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, in closing, Kyle, you are now, I mean, by the way, there is so much, you're all over, you know, you're all over the web, and plenty of videos of you. You're a professional firearms instructor, so will you just explain what you do now as your profession?
Yeah, so what I do now is I teach, you know, basically one of about four things to the military law enforcement, and I do civilian classes as well. I do, probably a dozen to maybe 18 civilian classes a year all over the country. So I teach pistol, carbine, scoped rifle, or sniper type stuff, CQB, and that's kind of it. Those are the big four. And I've been doing that. I formed my own company in 2010, so this is our 8th year of business, and we make the majority of our money from the government. I have a bunch of military contracts and I have some guys that work for me. So that's where the majority of our money is made. And it's good. I mean, I did the best I could in trying to, find a way to make a living off what I had done for, the time I was 18 to 30 years old. So there's not a lot of choices out there. And I didn't want to deploy anymore. So that's what I do now. And it's doing pretty well. Yeah, we're all over the place. So I'm sure people can Google my name and get way more of me than they want.
Yeah, I look forward to attending one of your classes. I mean, and you're also I know you're a rock climber, you're a ultra runner. What else do you do?
I mean, I haven't, the last ultra I ran was for your brother. So I kind of do maintenance runs. I do, I probably do 3 or 4 or 5 mile runs a week. Right now, I haven't climbed in forever. I do an urban climbing class for the military and law enforcement, where we've come up with ways to climb buildings with gear and without gear. That's actually one of the kind of the side classes that I offer. So most of my climbing nowadays is in an urban area, which is actually a lot more dangerous because a lot of times we can't have rope. It's just the nature of it. Really, I mean, I would say my motorcycle is probably my outlet, so to speak, when I'm not working, even though I really wouldn't call my work. It's kind of like having fun, but
right.
But yeah, ride a motorcycle. I enjoy riding, so I ride all over the place. I ride to jobs, as long as they're not too far, from wherever. I wouldn't ride from coast to coast probably to do a job because I just, wouldn't physically be able to make it back to the next job in time. But if it's within, a few hours, 12 hours or so, I'll generally hop on my bike and go. So other than that, man, just, hanging out, raising kids and, enjoying, as somebody told me the other day, they said, and I used this the other day on a blog post because I never thought about it myself, but somebody said, "Hey man, you've done a good job of never having a real job." And I said, "Well, I never really thought about it like that, but okay." And I, that's again, somebody says that to you, they're probably right. I probably don't appreciate it as much as I should, but I mean, really, every day I get to get up, go and shoot guns, and I'm generally going there and coming back on a motorcycle or maybe, on a plane like today or whatever, but it's kind of, a little bit of travel in there, and it's kind of a good deal, man. I am definitely appreciative of it, and I enjoy it right now.
Man, you're a great American, Kyle. I really appreciate you spending some time with me, and also just thanks for your service to our country and now what you do for our law enforcement and military and us civilians too. I mean, I look forward to taking one of your classes, and just a great American. So thank you very much. Anything you want to say in closing?
Well, I mean, I appreciate those are very nice words, man. I'm as I've said before, I'm a small spoke in a very large wheel. There's tons of people out there who have contributed to me and my success, and I could probably spend another hour plus just going naming people that even from our hometown that maybe they don't even know they influenced me. Maybe I didn't know until later in life. I enjoyed my military service, I really did. And I got out at 10 years, and there's probably every other day I was like, damn, I should have done 20. But So it was my pleasure to do that. I enjoyed it. I lost a lot of good friends along the way. But they died well. That's what we call it. They died well. They enjoyed what they did. And So that's what I try to do now, is just kind of honor them and keep on showing the people who need to know it what I've learned in 20 plus years of doing this. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate you having me on here.
It's an honor, and you reached out to me very quickly after Mark was killed, and you and I hadn't talked since you were in high school, since you graduated. So I appreciate you doing that too, and reaching out to me and telling me you knew some controllers as well, and the caliber guys they were, and anyway there was a lot of exchanges back and forth, and so much appreciation on that.
Absolutely, man. That's unfortunately we've been touched with a lot of death on our side since the war, but it's hard when it's from a small town like me and you were from, and I definitely wanted to give you and your family a call, because it's odd, it's not like being in Fayetteville or Coronado or Virginia Beach, where unfortunately guys are getting killed all the time, and the community kind of hardens to it. So yeah, man, I was glad to hang out with your dad and your mom and your family when I came in. That was cool, seeing everybody again.
Oh yeah.
No matter, everybody will agree, man, we can't have a good war without a combat controller. Because when stuff gets really, really, really bad, you're like, hey, we need a big bomb right over there now.
Hey, you see that tree line over there? It needs to go bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. People just don't, it's hard to explain to people. Medics and combat controllers, they do not get the appreciation they need, and the credit they deserve, because they saved a lot. I would not be alive. I'll tell you that right now. I would not be alive if it wasn't for some combat controllers. 100%. So
awesome.
I appreciate your brother and everything he did, and the sacrifice your family made too, man. That was that's a huge deal. But it's good. Your brother died well, so
yeah,
we appreciate everything he did.
He sure did. Well, thank you. Till next time, Kyle. I'd love to have you on again, maybe sometime later on down the road.
Anytime as well, and we'll see you when I'm down at the Scoped range in Alabama, man. You got to come by.
I'll be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.